July 14, 2019. Virginia Beach, Pernell, Sweet Pea. Whitaker was crossing Northampton Boulevard when a car struck him at 10 p.m. He died instantly at age 55. The greatest defensive boxer who ever lived was gone. But before his tragic death, Whitaker sat down for one final interview, and he finally named the 5 fighters who gave him absolute hell. Pernell Whitaker was born on January 2, 1964, in the Youngs Park housing community of Norfolk, Virginia. His parents Raymond and Novella Whitaker raised him with 2 brothers and 4 sisters in one of the toughest neighborhoods in the city. Money was tight, the streets were dangerous. But his mother Novella kept her children focused on education and hard work. When Pernell was 8 years old, a recreation center director named Clyde Taylor saw him fighting in the street. Taylor took the boy to a local boxing gym. Pernell loved it immediately. After school, he would go straight to the gym and stay there until his mother called him home for dinner. His family and friends called him Pete. When he started winning amateur fights in Norfolk, the hometown crowds would chant, "Sweet Pete, Sweet Pete." A local sports reporter misheard the chant and wrote in the newspaper that fans were chanting, "Sweet Pea." The nickname stuck forever. Whitaker's amateur career was legendary. The official record shows 214 fights with 201 wins and 91 knockouts, though he claimed over 500 amateur fights. In 1982, he won silver at the World Championships. In 1983, he won gold at the Pan American Games. Then came 1984, the Los Angeles Olympics. Whitaker was selected for the United States Olympic boxing team alongside Evander Holyfield, Meldrick Taylor, Mark Breland, and Tyrell Biggs, the greatest collection of amateur boxers ever assembled. Whitaker was so popular that his teammates elected him captain. On July 28, 1984, Pernell Whitaker won the Olympic gold medal in the lightweight division. He defeated Puerto Rico's Luis Ortiz in the final. He was 20 years old. He stood on that podium and told the world he was turning professional. Boxing would be his only job forever. Whitaker turned professional on November 15, 1984. His promoter was Lou Duva. His trainer was George Benton, who taught Whitaker the famous Philly shell defense. Whitaker was a southpaw with unbelievable defensive skills. He could make world-class fighters look like amateurs. He would stand right in front of you and make you miss by inches. His head movement was poetry. His style was about hitting and not getting hit. That's the sweet science. And nobody did it better than Sweet Pea. On December 21, 1985, Whitaker married Rovonda Anthony in a boxing ring at the Virginia Beach Pavilion Convention Center. They would have 4 children together. Whitaker kept winning. In his 12th fight on March 28, 1987, he faced Roger Mayweather, Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s uncle and former 2-division world champion. Whitaker outboxed Mayweather over 12 rounds at the Norfolk Scope in front of 10,000 screaming hometown fans. He won the NABF lightweight title. On March 12, 1988, Whitaker got his first world title shot. He traveled to Paris, France to challenge Jose Luis Ramirez for the WBC lightweight championship. And this would become the first opponent on Whitaker's list of the 5 toughest fighters he ever faced. Whitaker broke his left hand on Ramirez's skull in the 4th round. But he kept boxing. He outboxed Ramirez for 12 rounds with one good hand. When the decision was announced, the judges gave Ramirez a split decision victory. The crowd was shocked. Boxing experts were appalled. Whitaker had clearly won. But that's boxing. Whitaker later said that beating a world champion with a broken hand and still getting robbed made Ramirez one of his toughest memories. Not because Ramirez was better, but because the injustice burned so deep. Whitaker went back to Virginia. On February 18, 1989, he challenged Greg Haugen for the IBF lightweight title. Whitaker knocked Haugen down in the 6th round for the first time in Haugen's career. Whitaker won by unanimous decision. He was finally a world champion. On August 20, 1989, Whitaker got his rematch with Jose Luis Ramirez. This time, there would be no controversy. Whitaker destroyed Ramirez and won the WBC lightweight title. He had avenged his only loss. On May 19, 1990, Whitaker faced his second toughest opponent, Azumah Nelson of Ghana. Nelson was the WBC super featherweight champion, moving up to challenge Whitaker for the WBC and IBF lightweight titles at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. Nelson was 31 wins and 1 loss with 23 knockouts. He was a dangerous African warrior, a Hall of Fame fighter. Whitaker dominated Nelson over 12 rounds. He made Nelson miss 76% of his punches. Whitaker landed 464 of 989 punches, while Nelson connected on only 179 of 739. The judges scored it 116 to 111, 115 to 113, and 116 to 114, all for Whitaker. In the final round, Whitaker showboated by lifting Nelson's leg and tapping him on the head. Referee Mills Lane deducted a point. Whitaker later said that Nelson was one of the toughest opponents he ever faced because Nelson never stopped coming forward no matter how many punches he missed. Nelson had the heart of a lion. On August 11, 1990, Whitaker knocked out Juan Nazario in 1 round to win the WBA lightweight title. Pernell Whitaker was now the undisputed lightweight champion of the world. Pernell Whitaker was now the undisputed lightweight champion. He defended his unified titles 6 times. That remains the longest unified lightweight championship reign in boxing history. In 1989, Ring Magazine named him Fighter of the Year. He was the best pound-for-pound boxer on the planet. But Whitaker wanted more. He moved up to light welterweight and won the IBF title. Then he moved up to welterweight on March 6, 1993, defeating Buddy McGirt to win the WBC welterweight title. Now came the fight everyone wanted to see. On September 10, 1993, Whitaker faced Julio Cesar Chavez at the Alamodome in San Antonio, Texas. This was Whitaker's 3rd toughest opponent. Chavez entered with 87 wins and 0 losses. Over 65,000 fans packed the arena. It was the largest indoor boxing crowd in history at that time. Whitaker put on the greatest performance of his life. He made Chavez look foolish for 12 rounds. CompuBox showed Whitaker landed 311 punches to Chavez's 220. The Associated Press scored it 116 to 112 for Whitaker. Every boxing expert at ringside had Whitaker winning by a wide margin. Then the scorecards came. Judge Jack Woodruff scored it 115 to 113 for Whitaker. Judge Mickey Vann scored it 115 to 115. Judge Franz Marty scored it 115 to 115. Majority draw. Pernell Whitaker had been robbed again. Sports Illustrated put him on the cover with one word: robbed. Whitaker said Chavez was one of his toughest opponents, not because Chavez was better, but because getting robbed of that victory after putting on a masterpiece destroyed something inside him. The injustice haunted him forever. Whitaker kept fighting. On April 12, 1997, he faced his 4th toughest opponent, Oscar De La Hoya. The fight was at the Thomas and Mack Center in Las Vegas. It was billed as pound for pound. Whitaker was 33 years old, defending his WBC welterweight title. De La Hoya was 24 years old, undefeated at 23, and the 1992 Olympic gold medalist and 3-division world champion. De La Hoya was a 3-1 favorite. In the 3rd round, De La Hoya suffered a cut under his right eye from an accidental headbutt. Under WBC rules, Whitaker had a point deducted to compensate De La Hoya for the injury. In the 9th round, Whitaker caught De La Hoya off balance with a left hand. De La Hoya's right glove touched the canvas. Official knockdown. Whitaker dominated with his jab. CompuBox showed Whitaker landed 232 punches to De La Hoya's 191. Whitaker landed 160 jabs compared to De La Hoya's 45 jabs. The fight was close, but Whitaker appeared to do enough to win. Then the scorecards came. Judge Chuck Giampa scored it 115 to 111 for De La Hoya. Judge Dalby Shirley scored it 116 to 110 for De La Hoya. Judge Jerry Roth scored it 116 to 110 for De La Hoya. Unanimous decision for Oscar De La Hoya. The Las Vegas Review-Journal polled 26 writers who covered the fight. 14 scored it for Whitaker. 11 scored it for De La Hoya. 1 scored it even. Whitaker was devastated. He said after the fight, "I could not have performed better. That should have been a blowout in my favor." Years later, Oscar De La Hoya himself would admit that Whitaker was the most skillful and toughest opponent he ever faced. More skilled than Floyd Mayweather. More difficult than Manny Pacquiao. De La Hoya said, "Whitaker had to be one of the most skillful fighters in any generation. He could stay right in front of you and still slip the punches. Whitaker knew how to knock you out too. Punching power, skill, IQ. Whitaker had it all. He's probably one of the all-around best boxers I faced." Whitaker's career fell apart after the De La Hoya loss. He tested positive for cocaine after his next fight. He was suspended. His drug addiction consumed him. On February 20th, 1999, Whitaker faced his fifth and final toughest opponent, Felix Trinidad. Trinidad was 35-0 with the IBF welterweight title. Whitaker was 35 years old, past his prime, struggling with drugs and alcohol. Trinidad was 26 years old, bigger, fresher, stronger. From the opening bell, Trinidad was the aggressor. Whitaker's defensive skills had slowed down. In round 2, Trinidad caught Whitaker and knocked him down. Whitaker got up, but Trinidad was in control. The fight went 12 rounds. Trinidad won by unanimous decision. During the fight, Trinidad fractured Whitaker's jaw. It was Whitaker's first convincing defeat. Whitaker said Trinidad was his toughest opponent because he faced him when he was no longer the same fighter. His speed was gone. His reflexes had dulled. The cocaine had destroyed his body. Trinidad beat a broken version of Sweet Pea. Whitaker fought twice more. On April 27, 2001, he broke his clavicle in the 4th round against Carlos Bojorquez. He was losing on all scorecards at the time. Whitaker retired. His final record was 40 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw with 17 knockouts. In 2006, he was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. He was recognized as one of the greatest defensive fighters who ever lived. On July 14, 2019, at 10 p.m., Whitaker was crossing Northampton Boulevard in Virginia Beach when a car struck and killed him. He was 55 years old. The driver remained at the scene. It was ruled an accident. And the greatest defensive boxer in history couldn't avoid that final punch from fate. Pernell Whitaker beat the unbeatable, but the judges stole his legacy twice. He named his 5 toughest opponents and proved that talent isn't always enough in boxing. Sweet Pea was a defensive genius who changed the sport forever. If you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button and comment below. What's the biggest robbery in boxing history?